Did Netflix One Piece make a big mistake? One of the biggest challenges of making a live-action anime or manga adaptation is addressing the question, how closely do you follow the character designs in the source material? Because basically you have two considerations working against each other. One, that altering the essence of the character designs too drastically will piss off fans, and two, that following the original designs too closely may result in a cheesy, awkward-looking production. In other words, a production that feels like something out of a cosplay convention. And that isn't an insult to cosplay, because quality cosplay striving for accuracy can be truly stunning or sexy or awe-inspiring. The problem is that when you bring those very close adaptations of the original characters from the photo studio into a motion picture setting with movement, acting, and the broader world feel taken into account, the believability of that surreal style can quickly fall apart. After all, outfits in manga and anime are not necessarily designed to make sense in the real world or to prioritize real-world functionality. And you can just imagine the issues with keeping all the passengers on board while doing stunts in an outfit made of floss, or making Pegasus Seiya look truly cool on anything less than a Marvel budget, or slapping a bamboo gag into someone's mouth without viewers thinking they've walked into the wrong section at the video store. Even the most true-to-source, pro-level cosplays could end up looking very awkward in a live-action setting, or simply be impractical because they inhibit the actor's range of motion. So the biggest challenge when it comes to costume design is to make outfits that capture the spirit of the original creations while also looking and functioning sensibly in real life. Of course, some live-action adaptations do a better job of this than others, and a prime example of an adaptation that did fans right was Rurouni Kenshin. The designs perfectly recreate the magic of the originals, and the outfits look like they have actually been worn in battle, not picked straight off the rack at winners. So these costumes are believable and boost the quality of the production rather than detract from it. Of course, Rurouni Kenshin is a historical fiction, so there is less risk of uncanny costume adaptations to begin with. But another adaptation that closely and successfully follows the source material for somewhat of a different effect is Ace Attorney. Obviously, the costumes and the hair in this film look absolutely absurd, but the faithful cosplay-like outfits actually work in the movie's favor, since the over-the-top reinterpretation of the mundane is a big part of the appeal of the Phoenix Wright video games. On the other hand, we have Bleach. Bleach is actually pretty good as far as anime adaptations go, but some of the costume designs and character portrayals that worked in the manga end up feeling quite hokey in the live-action setting and detracting from otherwise serious moments. Similarly, in the Full Metal Alchemist adaptation, characters like Anime Expo Scar clung too closely to the original designs and made the film less immersive as a result. There are countless other examples of shows striking the right balance, or not, and what works or doesn't work for a given adaptation often depends on the setting of the story and its tone. But what about One Piece? Has Netflix made a big mistake with its approach to character design, or are the producers right on the money? As you might know, we actually have somewhat of a frame of reference as to what a live-action One Piece that follows the designs of the manga to a T could look like. Of course, I'm talking about the Indeed Japan commercials of the late 2010s. The commercials were nothing more than a bit of good fun, but they also gave us the best indication at the time of what Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, Usopp, Nami, and Chopper might look like in a full-fledged post-time-skip live-action series shooting for Page's perfect accuracy. One Piece is fortunate in that the tone of the world is zany and over-the-top by design, giving it more leeway with the cheese factor than many other adaptations. But even so, some of the design elements in the Indeed commercials are probably too fantastical to be taken seriously in a live-action series, even though they do look incredible as standalone cosplay material. As such, it's not surprising that NetPiece dialed back the costumes from the one-to-one adaptation end of the spectrum in favor of a more balanced approach. But let's break down the qualities of and the concerns around the NetPiece designs. Luffy is the most straightforward of the bunch, with his iconic outfit and various alternate outfits based on manga covers as loving Easter eggs for the fans. Aside from the fact that he's a living Stretch Armstrong, Luffy's design is fairly simple, easy to translate into live action, and I haven't seen people complaining about it. But we'll see what happens if we ever get to Gear 4. As for Zoro, in addition to Makenyu being perfectly built for the role, the costume design is lifted straight from the manga, and they even kept his iconic green hair, although they did make it a darker shade so that he doesn't look like a clown or a confused teenager. One of my biggest concerns was how stupid the three sword style might look in the live action context, but it could be worse, and there would be mobs on the street if they ditched it. Moving forward, Jacob Romero looks perfect as Usopp, but this is also one of the most talked about character designs because in addition to minor changes like ditching the goggles and giving him dreads instead of curls, the costume designers altogether dropped Usopp's signature Pinocchio nose. If any live action series can pull off a nose like that, it has to be One Piece. But given what we did see Luffy in the Indeed commercial, I do believe it was the right call to scrap it. Sanji is another character who lost recognizable manga features like his curly eyebrows and fuzz patch, but the rest of his design follows the manga pretty closely. Fortunately, they didn't go too wild with the blonde hair, and Taz Skylar is also an athletic guy who can make the action believable. Of course, when it comes to Netflix's Straw Hats, the hottest topic was always going to be the portrayal of Nami for the most obvious of reasons. And as you might expect, when details for the show first started coming out, people were quick to draw comparisons to the recent disappointment with Faye's character design in Cowboy Bebop that drove Faye's actress Daniela Pineda to post a rant, in which she sarcastically apologized for not being 6 feet tall with double D-sized breasts and a 2-inch waist. However, Daniela Pineda is obviously a very attractive, well-endowed woman, so I somehow doubt that the majority of disgruntled fans were upset over her physical attributes. From an aesthetic standpoint, the real issue was that her costume looked frumpy, bulky, and poorly fitted for the type of character Faye is supposed to be in the anime. And it didn't need to be anywhere near as revealing or impractical as Faye's original outfit, but a sleeker, sexier look would have better suited Faye's femme fatale characteristics. Not that it necessarily mattered, given that the seductive, clever, and manipulative Faye of the anime was rewritten as an obnoxious cringe magnet. Neither the script nor the costume design of Netbop were Daniela Pineda's fault. So it's a shame that she got caught in the crossfire, considering that she did very well with what she was given. But that said, one Korean American cosplayer who goes by KT Cosplay did her own live-action inspired take on Faye Valentine, and it strikes the perfect balance between the hypersexualized outfit of the anime and the potato sack of the live-action series. So it's a shame that Tomorrow Studios didn't aim for something like this with Faye's design in Netbop. But looping back to One Piece, given that the same studio responsible for the Faye fiasco was now bringing Nami to life, you can understand the apprehension from fans of the original work. And obviously, Emily Rudd is not a 1-to-1 body type match with the original Nami, but she doesn't need to be because she's fit, charming, and she looks excellent in the role. Not to mention that the costume designers have respected the source material in a way that should satisfy fans. They also kept Nami's vibrant orange hair to inject some extra color into the cast, and I think it looks pretty good. Of course, I am curious what kind of balance they would try to strike in the fingers crossed but it seems unlikely somehow scenario that NetPiece actually makes it to the post-time skip era of One Piece, but let's not get ahead of ourselves here. As for the supporting characters and villains, by and large, the costumes try to stay faithful to the original work, and they look pretty good. Kobe, Mihawk, Buggy, Shanks, Alvida, etc, etc. Fans are loving the designs. Well, except for Arlong. In the manga, Arlong is such an imposing villain because of his sheer size and musculature, and McKinley Belcher III himself is a fairly well-muscled and fairly tall guy, but aesthetically they may have been better off casting a significantly taller bodybuilder with big, broad shoulders like Ike Catcher, Martin Ford, or even Shaq. Then again, even if they did catch a 7-foot monster, they would end up in the same situation soon enough when villains larger than Arlong enter the fray. So maybe it wasn't the worst long-term choice after all. But as for Arlong's costume, it is odd that they covered up his chest and abs as if he was on his way to Sunday school, and many fans are displeased with the design in general, reinforcing the idea that sticking close to the source material was the right call for this particular adaptation. Fortunately, the majority of the live-action costumes look fantastic, but the character designs are only one piece of the puzzle. So what do you think about the action, the acting, and the story of NetPiece?